Buenos días, hoy vamos a realizar la segunda videoclase de salud comunitaria en la cual vamos a hablar de las interacciones humanas con las bacterias. Entonces, les recuerdo que las actividades ustedes pueden ver en Canvas el cronograma de actividades. Esas fechas se establecieron por reglamento de UVB virtual, por lo cual pues deben entregarse las actividades en los tiempos establecidos. Y el número de actividades, recuerden que para este corte son 2 actividades. Una era un foro que se cerró la semana pasada, pero les dejé abierto esta semana. Y la otra es una tarea que también ya está abierta y una evaluación. La evaluación cierra el 16 de octubre y la tarea estará abierta hasta el 1 de octubre. Entonces, recuerden que deben entregar las tareas con todas las indicaciones que encuentran ahí en la plataforma. Y dentro del tiempo establecido, pues la puntualidad también es un criterio de evaluación. Teniendo en cuenta que esta videoclase es en inglés, pues a partir de ahora les voy a hablar en inglés. So today we're going to talk about human microbe interactions. And first, we're going to define what is pathology. Pathology is the science that studies the disease. What that means that is concerned about the etiology as well as the structural and functional changes brought about by the disease. And etiology is what causes the disease. What is an infection? Infection is an invasion or colonization of the body by a pathogenic microorganism. And you could have an infection despite the absent or detectable disease. What is the disease? The disease occurs when an infection results in any change from the state of health. Is an abnormal state in which a part of the whole body is incapable of performing its normal functions. We all have a normal microbiota. What is that? Is the number of body cells is in average 1% in every individual, and we have also a number of bacteria in our body. The microbes that normally inhabit a healthy individual bodies is called normal microbiota or normal flora. What is a microbial antagonist? Is a normal microbiota that can benefit the host. So, these bacteria will defend you from the harmful microorganisms. In other words, the good bacteria help you defend you against the bad bacteria. So what is the function of the good bacteria? The good bacteria is going to defend you against the bad bacteria by competing for the attachment site. That means for the place where the bacteria is going to live. For the nutrients, they're going to compete for the food, and some of these bacteria will produce some antibiotics against the bad bacteria. So we get sick when this balance between the normal flora and the host is upset. For example, when you use antibiotics to kill when you use antibiotics, these antibiotics kill all the bacteria in your body, not only the bad bacteria, also the normal flora. So when this normal flora dies, there's more sites available for the bad bacteria in the future and more nutrients. That means that bad bacteria can win over the body. And And also we can have infections that results from a prion infection. That is also called a secondary infection. Mm, So we need to have some events for the infection to be present. First, we have the infection must be established. There are three main factors that helps a microbe to establish. First, it has to enter to the body through a portal of entry. Second, the numbers of cells that enter the body is enough the defense. And three, other predisposing factors that may make the host more susceptible to the disease. So if you have only one of these, you probably won't get sick, but if you have the three, then there will be the infection. The portal of entry is the ways that the bacteria enter the host, and so the microbes can cause the disease unless they enter the body to any opening. For example, you could eat the virus and don't get cold because the acids in your stomach will protect you. So the main ways to enter to the body is through the mucous membrane, respiratory tract, gastrointestinal tract, urinary tract, and conjunctiva. That is the membrane in the eyes. Through the respiratory tract, you can inhale some moist or dust. The gastrointestinal tract, you can eat food, water that are contaminated, or you could be sick because you have your uh, hands dirty or some things you put in your mouth. The urogenital tract could be through sexual intercourse, and in the eyes with if you touch your eyes with your dirty hands. Also, the microbes can enter to the body through the skin because it is if your skin is unbroken and unpenetrable, but those bacteria can enter through hair follicles, sweat duct, and some injuries you have in your skin. Also, we have a parenteral route where is the deposit directly into the tissues beneath the skin. That could be through punctures, injections, cuts, wounds, surgeries. So we have a size of inoculum, that is the numbers of cells that enter through the portal of entry. And the infection dose is the minimum number of cells required to cause the infection. Some organisms require 100 cells to cause the infection, while others require just 10. So the factor number 3 is predisposing factors. So that those are the conditions that the receptor must have to to get the disease, and is the one that makes the body more susceptible to the disease and may alter the course of the disease. For example, gender. In the woman is more common the urinary tract infection because female's anatomy is different, and we have a shorter urinary tract that may lead to the fecal materia can easily enter to the urinary tract. The weather, for example, winter weather brings more dry air. The dry air drags out mucous membrane, causing them to be susceptible to invasion. Others include nutrition, age, and some factors of fatigue. Other important definition is attachment. After the microbes has entered to the body, the next step is to attach and colonize the body surface. Adhesion could be some surface proteins and capsules that are used by bacteria to adhere to and colonize body surface. Mechanical means such as suckers, hooks, and barbs are used by parasites to adhere and colonize the body. But we have some defense, so we need to that will protect us from the bacteria. So once the organism has made it into the body and attached, it still has to avoid or defend itself from the body internal defense. So that is called the immune system. First, the bacteria has to avoid phagocytosis. Some white cells, some white blood cells will glob out cells that don't belong in the body, break them down and discard them as garbage. That process is called phagocytosis. Capsules or other discs are used by microorganisms to avoid these vacuum cleaners of cells. And some bacteria make chemicals that are toxic to white blood cells. So what is the process of the disease or the stages of the disease? First is the incubation period. That is the time interval between the initial infection and the first appearance of any signs or symptoms. In other words, no signs or symptoms, but the organism has entered the body. The next one is the prodromal period. That is a short period that follows the incubation period. In some diseases, is early and has some mild symptoms, you start to feeling that you may get sick, and the period of illness is more acute stage of the illness. The person has of the signs and symptoms of the disease, and the number of white cells increases or decreases. In the patient, we're going to, if the patient were going to die, the death will occur during this period. And there is finally the period of decline where the symptoms and signs are done. The patient is susceptible to secondary infection and the immune system has just fought out the infection and the body is weak. It's the perfect time for a new infection to begin. Then it is the period of convalescence. The person regains strength and the body returns to its pre-disease state. And it is the period during which the disease is spread from the infecting organism. For example, some organisms are contagious before the signs and symptoms are manifest. Others are contagious during the worst portion of the manifest of the signs and symptoms. How the disease is caused? First, we have the virulence factors. That they are the characteristics or structure of the bacteria that helps them to establish into the host or that cause damage to the host. There are some the bacteria produce some exoenzymes that breaks down and damage tissue and dissolve the host defense. For example, mucosinas digest the protecting coat of the mucous membrane. Keratinase digests principal components of skin and hair. Collagenase digests principal factor, fiber, and connective tissue. Some of these bacteria also produce toxins, that is a chemical product that are poisonous to their organism. Toxemia is when we have the toxin spread by the blood from the site of the infection to other parts of the body. And intoxication is when we eat the toxin. And some toxins are named according to the mode of action. For example, neurotoxins affect the nervous system. An example for neurotoxin is tetanus spasm. This toxin is made by Clostridium tetani, and this cause a disease known as tetanus. These toxins will bind to the nerve cells and block relaxation pathways, or in other words, it causes uncontrollable muscle spasms. Death will occur when the toxin affects the function of the heart or the lungs. The second one is the type of toxins. First, we have the exotoxins that are made inside a living microbe and released to the surrounding environment. This toxin will be usually carried on a plasmid or PAX. They work by destroying host cells or blocking metabolic function. The body will produce antibiotics to exotoxins called antitoxins. The antitoxins will help the body to fight off the effects of toxins made by the bacteria. And also, some pharmaceutical companies will inactivate the toxins with heat, and now we use it as vaccination, like the tetanus shot. Then we have the endotoxins that are part of the LPS and outer membranes of the G cells wall. When the G bacteria die, the cells are released, which liberates the toxins. The responses by the host are fever, chills, weakness, aches, in some cases leads to shock and death. Endotoxins can also induce miscarrying and activate blood clotting proteins, which can turn into a heart attack or a stroke. So, in the stage of some diseases, we may have a septic shock. What is a septic shock? Is a life-threatening loss of blood pressure, where the phagocytosis of G bacteria produces the phagocytides to release tumor necrosis factor. These TNF damage capillaries, causing them to become more permeable, and as a result, they lose large amounts of fluid and more bacteria can cross the barrier. Shock is when a large amounts of fluid are lost. The blood becomes thick and it is difficult for the heart to continue pumping the blood through the body. The organ eventually fails and the patient dies. Endotoxin without living bacterial cells can still cause disease. Remember that the lysis of the G bacterial cells that release toxin, that which is the result of the shock and death. So we are going to classify disease. First, we have the symptoms. That is the change in the body function. So we feel lethargic, cold. Then there are the signs that are measurable and observable changes. Red throat, fever, and a syndrome is a specific group of symptoms and signs that always accompany a disease. What is a communicable disease? We talk about that in the first class. It's a disease that spreads from the host to the host, either directly or indirectly. For example, herpes that spreads direct to contact with an open sore. Contagious disease that is the disease that is easily spread from person to person. For example, chickenpox, and no communicable disease that do not spread from host to host, like tetanus, that you must be in contact with the bacteria in the environment. The pathologic effects of the disease. First, we have the local infection. There is a bacteria invading into a limited small area of the body. Then we have the systemic infection, where the bacteria or the products spread through the body, for example, in the tetanus infection. And focal infection, where the local infection spread to other areas of the body where they are confined. For example, an infection in the tooth that causes a sinus infection. So we have some definitions. First, bacteremia, that is the presence of bacteria in the blood. Septicemia is a bacteria multiplying in the blood. Viremia is the presence of viruses in the blood, and toxemia is the presence of a toxin in the blood. We have the primary infection, that is an acute infection that causes initial infection. Secondary infection, that is caused by an opportunist pathogen after the primary infection is weakens the body's defense. And subclinical infection, one that does not cause any notable illness. Severity and duration or duration of the disease. We have the acute phase, where it develops rapidly but lasts a short time. The subacute is a disease that is in between. It's not so short but not that long. Chronic develops more slowly. The disease is continual or occur in long periods. And latent infection or disease is caused by an agent, remains inactive for a time but becomes active with certain triggers. The rate is which the is at which the disease is spread, and the number of people involved are determined partly by the immunity of the population. The immunity of the population is determined by the number of people who are current on their vaccines and the number of people who have previous exposures to a particular organ. For example, now we have the problem with measles, that because the people don't want to get vaccines, now we have again the disease in our population. Herd immunity means that many people in the community are immune to a particular organism. They help provide immunity to a small number of individuals in the community who are not immune. Portals of exit. An organism has defined routes to exit for spread. Most common portals of exit are the respiratory tract and the gastrointestinal tract. Will have discharge from mouth and nose, and some exist through the feces. Also, through the urogenital tract and reproductive tracts are also portals of exit. Drainage from wounds and infected blood can also be a portal of exit. Keep in mind that our organism doesn't want to cause you disease because it hurts you, but it wants you to die. It causes disease as a result of its effort to stay alive and ground. So that's it for today. I hope you learned something new today. Remember, you have to do the activities in the platform. And if you have any questions of doubt, you can contact me through the email of Canvas. Thank you and have a good day.